were we going to start with any greetings of sorts, or did I miss that part?
We're now live, Chair Kaiser, and I'm just going to kick it off and turn it over to you.
Excellent.
Give me 1 second. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first hearing of the Joint Committee on Cyber, IT, and Biotech for the 2024 year. For anyone who doesn't know me, I am Senator Katie Fry-Hester from District 9, which is Howard and Montgomery counties. And I have the honor of co-chairing this committee along with my colleague, Chair Kaiser. Would you like to say hello, Chair Kaiser? And then I have a couple remarks about the agenda.
Excellent. Thank you, Senator Hester, and thank you to our guests. And we do have 5 or 6 senators and 5 or 6 delegates. Others will be joining us soon. And thank you to Delegate Feldmark for joining us and welcoming everyone, and see if we can keep this moving to respect everyone's time and maybe even end our overall day on the early side. So thanks again to everyone. Sorry I can't be on camera quite yet.
That's quite all right. We caught most of what you said. It got garbled a little bit at the end, but I think we're trying to, have a efficient meeting. We've got great speakers lined up, and looking forward to it and possibly ending a little bit early. So I just wanted to start by setting some context for those of our viewers online. I've been chairing this committee now for 6 or 7 years, and as the name implies, it's cybersecurity, IT, and biotech. And we have spent a lot of time on cyber and IT and not quite enough on biotech. And so the biotech industry contributes $20 billion to our state's economy. And the average annual life sciences incomes are significantly higher than other industries in the state. So we just thought it was really important from an economic standpoint for us to engage and open it up for discussion. It's a vast and complex subject, which can easily kind of, get lost in the details. And so today we're joined by a number of experts to explore this current landscape. And with that, we've got a really exciting, agenda. We've got the first section of the agenda is on biotechnology in agriculture and biotechnology in healthcare. And then the second half, we're really looking at the future of biotechnology, and we'll have an exciting presentation by the Department of Commerce and the Maryland Tech Council. So with that kind of really broad overview, let's open it up to our first panel, Biotech in Agriculture. And we've got 3 fabulous panelists. Let's see, we've got Andrew Castley, the Vice President of Government Relations from Bioenergy DevCo. We have Alicia Mulkey, currently the Program Manager at the Maryland Department of Agriculture. And we have Chris Hubb, the Accelerator Director for F3. And so with that, I will turn it over. Did you guys want to do kind of presentation, and then combine questions? Does that work for all of you? Okay, so we'll start in that order then. Andrew, over to you.
Thanks, Senator, and thanks again for inviting me to come before the committee. As you said, today I'm going to just talk about biotechnology and agriculture. It's quite fitting that we're getting some much-needed rain here in Maryland today. While biotechnology has helped us develop drought-tolerant crops, we haven't quite figured out how to make them grow without rain. So I'm going to try to share my screen, and hopefully this will work. Are you seeing my slideshow? Can you all see that slideshow?
We can't see it yet. No.
Yeah.
How do I?
Can somebody on staff make sure that Andrew has all the permissions he needs? We got it.
That work?
That works.
Okay, great. So as I said, my name is Andrew Castley. I am the Vice President of Government Relations for Bioenergy DevCo. They are a sister company to BTS Biogas out of Europe, where they own about 250 digester facilities in about 4 or 5 different countries. We opened our first facility in Jessup, Maryland, on the Maryland Food Center property. Basically, we take material, food waste and food processing residuals, and we process it in a way that's more environmentally friendly. Today, our goal is to talk about how it impacts the agriculture industry. So essentially, as we're bringing these types of materials, these organic materials in and processing them, what's the benefit to the existing agricultural land application processes? So first, we'll just kick off with like, what's the process? When food waste or food processing residuals are separated from the larger waste, whether it's going to a landfill or whether it's going to an incinerator or a land application, if it's diverted to our facility for recycling, it arrives on a truck. If it's material that's coming that's packaged, it's going to arrive in like a box truck. But if it's liquid in nature, so if it's like fats, oils, and grease or DAF waste coming from the agriculture industry, it would arrive in a tanker. Once it's arrived on the facility, it's decontaminated from packaging or any non-organic material. And then it's fed into our large digesters that you can see in these pictures, these gigantic tanks, which essentially serve, the science behind it is much like a cow's stomach. So the material is deprived of oxygen, it's kept warm, and it's constantly moving. And so like a cow's stomach, in that state, the beneficial bacteria that, like in a cow's stomach, will break that material down. It'll separate the water, it'll generate methane gas, and it will produce a solid that can be used as a soil amendment. The only difference is, unlike a cow, we don't release our methane to the atmosphere. We capture it and we turn it into renewable natural energy. In that stance, it can be used for transportation to power large truck fleets. It can be used to generate electricity on site. It can even be used to send through the grid to electrical power generation facilities. It can even be turned into green hydrogen, and we're partnering with some universities down on the Eastern Shore in the development of green hydrogen because it was recently identified as a hydrogen hub by the Biden administration. So there's essentially 2 different types of these types of facilities. You can see in this top picture, that's our facility in Jessup, Maryland. It's on the Maryland Food Center Authority, smack dab in the middle of all the major food processors. It definitely cuts down on the transportation of that material going to the landfill. The challenge is it's located on 5.5 acres. So it's a very, very compact site. It's what we call an urban model. You could set this facility up in New York City, Washington, D.C., or any highly populated area to process organic waste. The middle picture is our facility that's going up in Delaware. Conversely, that's on 250 acres. And it's an existing composting facility where we're going to be bringing about 90% of the materials coming in from agriculture. It's DAF waste coming from the poultry industry, where we will run it through our digesters, and the remaining solids will be processed through the composting facility on site. The third way of doing this is called co-digestion, and that's when you mix food waste or food processing residuals with either animal or human waste. Much like there are facilities, wastewater treatment facilities in the United States that are starting to do this as well. Depending on the process, depends on how the material can be used. But in really all 3 cases, it's an improvement over the existing waste industry, whether you're going for landfill, whether it's going to be land applied or incinerated. For the focus today on ag, we're just talking about land application. As many of you know, there's been increasing opposition to land application of DAF waste, which was the current agricultural process for disposing of that material. the increasing public opposition largely was stemmed around the offensive odors. If you've ever driven down to Ocean City and you're riding through a rural area, a lot of people will say, when they smell this hard smell, they'll be like, "Oh, that's chicken manure." But if it smells more like a rotting animal, then it's probably most likely DAF waste that's been land applied. The challenges with that existing process are not only that it smells bad, it also has the potential of spreading harmful pathogens. By diverting that material to a digester, we can capture those odors, we can kill those harmful pathogens, and we can turn that material into a stable soil amendment that can then be mixed with spread on fields without the fear of excessive runoff into surrounding waters. The federal government is very keen on this movement. They're putting a lot of money behind it in the Inflation Reduction Act, and the EPA recently redid their food waste hierarchy to include it. So the ultimate goal, as you can see on this slide, is to prevent food waste from the start by eliminating waste during the processing. If the food can't be consumed, then it should be, or sold, it should be donated. If it's past its usable lifespan for donation, then it should go to animals as a feedstock. And if passes that point, you can see that they've added in compost and anaerobic digestion. You'll notice that they put it in there twice. In both cases, after it's gone from compost or anaerobic digestion, if it can't go through that process, then the less desirable is to do direct land application. And the worst thing you can possibly do is just send it down the drain or send it to a landfill or incinerate it. The reason the EPA listed AD on their chart twice, it depends on the process. If you're just processing food waste, for example, and you don't have human biosolids in there, you're going to have less traces of heavy metals, pharmaceuticals, PFAS. These are all things that the General Assembly is keenly aware of. So the EPA broke it down and said, if you're sending it, if the material is of the quality that it can be sent directly to, once it's processed, the digestate can be used as a soil amendment, that's what it should be done. But if for some reason it's being, the contamination is too high, they list it, then it should be disposed of either in a landfill or in a different method. So where's Maryland on this? Maryland's actually way in the lead from other states. We started back in 2017 by creating a work group. The General Assembly created a work group to look at diverting organic waste from landfills. We've passed over 10 bills in that time, and I just pulled out a couple that are keen to what we're talking about today. In 2019, we codified the term anaerobic digestion and organics recycling in statute. And in the same year, under the Maryland Commercial Fertilizer Law, we also identified digestate as a soil conditioner. And this is something we're working on at the federal level because each state has a different regulation. So we're trying to get the feds to step up and kind of follow Maryland's lead. There's a number of bills that went between that, but in 2023, we passed a law that gives preferential treatment from state agencies to purchase recycled topsoil, which would be made from substrate of digestate and what we would call construction dirt that wouldn't support vegetation. You can make a recycled topsoil, and inherently that's going to be more expensive than harvesting virgin topsoil. But this bill requires that state agencies give preferential treatment to recycled material. And then in 24 last session, we required that the Department of Agriculture work with the Department of Energy and the Department of the Environment to put together a cohesive document that assists the development of small on-scale farm digesters to try to put all the permitting processes, all the incentives that are out there in one place for the agricultural community to take advantage of. And also last year, House Bill 991 passed that you're all familiar with, that establishes a permitting process for those individuals that deal with transport or processing of dissolved air flotation, or what's often called DAF material. Quickly, the digest date that comes out of the facilities, I said, it depends on what you're putting in, as depends on what you're getting out. But we've been able to partner with a number of soil development entities in producing engineered topsoil, different media substrates such as green roof medium, soil, biosol retention facilities. And we've recently launched a pilot program with Howard County, where and that's a picture there, where we're taking our digest data and we're taking it to their existing mulch facility, where it can be mixed with carbon and basically wood chips, where it will produce a high quality compost material. So I know I went through that very quickly, but I apologize for all the pictures. I'm a recovering high school teacher, so I deal best with pictures. I went through that pretty quickly, but I know we have 3 other presentations, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
That was perfect, Andrew. Absolutely perfect. 10 minutes on the dot. You aced it. You're also a recovering delegate, true?
That is true. That is true. I often apologize for that.
No, we're grateful to be able to continue working with you, and thank you for your service to the state. I have 2 questions, but I don't want you to answer them now. I'm just going to throw them out there. One is, the state is looking at like how to remediate the PFAS out of our wastewater treatment plants. And when we get to the Q&A period, I'd be curious if you could touch on anaerobic digestion's linked to that. I'd also like to learn a little bit more about the hydrogen thing. Any other members want to park a few questions with Andrew, and then we'll move on to Alicia?
I just want to thank him for being here and appreciate seeing you again. I do see another delegate has joined us as well. And it's very clear that you're a former delegate, because the presentation was actually geared to what we needed to hear. I guess the question I would pose to you and everyone else is not just what are we doing in the state, but what if anything, can the state government do to help or stop hurting the industry? Kind of a combined question for everyone. Thank you.
Perfect, Chair Kaiser. Okay, so something to digest on, Andrew. Let's see, let's move on to Alicia. Alicia, thank you so much for joining us. You're currently the program manager at MDA with a huge amount of responsibility, including state soil conservation, the Animal Waste Technology Fund, and the Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program. So we look forward to hearing from you as well. Over to you.
Thank you. Can you hear me, and can you see my slides? I'm not accustomed to Zoom either.
We can hear you, and I can see a slide, but there's like this Zoom quit unexpectedly thing on top of your slide.
Oh no. Why am I worried to boot me out? Let's keep going. And are you still hearing me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm ignoring the quit thing and hoping that this is going to work all right. I'm worried my state firewall doesn't like Zoom. Okay, so I just want to say thank you to the committee for inviting me here today. I also have just a few slides with the hopes that we would have plenty of time for questions, right? And for me to just really highlight one way the state is already working in this space, but I have included a slide about opportunities where I think may get to some of the crux of the question that the committee is thinking about. How do we think proactively? So let me get to the slide here on Maryland's Animal Waste Technology Fund. Did the slide progress?
Not yet.
You want to let one of the staff run this for me in case did that work now?
No.
I think you need to X out of that notification from Zoom for you to be able to show the slideshow.
Okay. I've X'd out and it shows it's progressed on my side, but you tell me if you're seeing a second slide now.
No, we aren't. Uh, let me pull it up, see if I can share
I
this.
was gonna say, I did send it in advance, so that may be the
Yeah.
simpler way.
So Alicia, can you stop? There you go. Stop
Yeah, okay, let me
sharing.
do that. Sorry.
No worries. It sure would be easier if we all use the same tech.
Yeah, 1 second.
Thank you, Donovan.
No worries.
So while he pulls that up, I'll go ahead and just kind of speak to some of the history of the Animal Waste Technology Fund. So we call that AWTF for short, right? So you'll see that acronym on the slide. This exists in Maryland statute already, dating back a little over 10 years ago. Yeah, so you can go to the next slide, Donovan. Thank you so much. So this is a longer standing program, kind of housed here in the Department of Agriculture, but is by no means kind of isolated to MDA, right? So it's an annual competitive cycle that we administer the funding, but we're very reliant on kind of several partners in helping us to select the projects themselves. So we have both a technical evaluation committee and an advisory committee that helps with the selections of the projects every year. So the technical evaluation committee is both sister agencies, the Maryland Department of Environment, Maryland Energy Administration, folks like that, but also the University of Maryland. We have a federal partner with the USDA, right? So it's a very collaborative effort where we're really looking at the technical merits of projects as they come in, beginning to rank and have some of the kind of iterative processes with the applicants, and from there elevating recommendations for projects to a broader advisory committee. And that advisory committee does have government members, but is really very focused on industry, stakeholders, nonprofits, folks who kind of really think about things from the policy and programmatic side of how the program can achieve state goals, right? So we really have a lot of input points across the whole of the process. And I should say early, two things that are important to understand when we say animal waste for purposes of the program certainly is inclusive of animal manures, but it is also inclusive of any other waste streams associated with animal production in the state of Maryland. So that can be wastewater associated with the milking parlor at dairy. It can be the organic residuals that Andrew was bringing up from DAF in the poultry industry. So all of those things are considered to be animal waste, right? That can be fed to any number of technologies. Anaerobic digestion is just one example, and using that really as a feedstock to the technology and looking at ideas where we can also use multiple feedstocks, so food waste and other materials that the state is really looking to look for maybe economical or environmental waste to alternatives to just land application, right? So all of those are eligible for the program itself and the funding. The second piece that's important to note here is that the fund explicitly is for demonstrations of existing technologies, right? We're very focused in this space on scaling demonstrated technology. So what we mean by that is often there is kind of a lab demonstration scale, and then the next phase would be to site that technology at a farm scale, or if it's in a farm scale and now they want to scale to a regional scale. This is a funding source that is really meant for that space. It is not what we would call R&D. I think the F3 speakers will talk a little bit more about that space, but really someone who is trying to still figure out the functionality and merit of the technology is not eligible for this funding piece, right? So we're really looking for, we know that this is a viable technology and we just need to provide that kind of capital investment from the state to really get it working on the landscape scale that the vendor is bringing to us. So that's key to this as well. The intent of the program, right, is really kind of grant oriented. It is not a cost share program. The state is really absorbing a lot of that, like I said, capital investment into the technology. It is often a partnership between a farm or multiple farms, right, can kind of come together with a private vendor, a company working alongside the farm. It's rare that the farm business wants to take on operating this technology in addition to running the farm, right? So we see a mix of both, but often it is a private company that's wanting to locate with the farm, lease a portion of the property to be able to demonstrate the technology. And I'll talk more about what opportunities that presents when we think about that partnership. But Andrew did a great job, I think, of kind of queuing up the thing that the technologies, where it's anaerobic digestion, can be gasification, composting, right? There's a suite of these technologies that we've offered funding for. What they all often have in common, right, is at the farm scale, you are providing a nutrient management opportunity to that farm, right? There are reasons that manure is better situated into a technology than land applied, right? Whether that's from their own crop production needs or from revenue needs, right? There's a reason that this manure and waste is being relocated. The farm is then often producing renewable energy that is offsetting the farm needs, right? So the energy production that's offsetting the energy production at the farm itself, which is providing certainly a savings to the farm operation. But in many cases, there's also additional electricity can then be put back to the power grid, providing a renewable energy form to the state, but also revenue back to the farm, right? So diversifying the revenue sources to the farm operation. And then last, the carbon-rich byproducts, right? So whether that's a digestate material, a composted material, in some situations with gasification, you're getting a biochar. All of that is a very carbon-rich material that can be much more easily transported and field applied. And then you're really thinking about the soil health benefits that come from that byproduct. So the farm is then also profiting and making their own opportunities of how they use that material as a revenue source on the farm, or if it's being transported elsewhere and potentially generating revenue, again, through the lens of carbon-rich soil health materials that are really obviously a priority to the department and to the state in other ways as we think about climate solutions, right? So it's a very circular kind of economy when we're talking about how to best leverage this fund and what it could provide to the state. So let me skip to the next slide then, Donovan, if you don't mind. So with that in mind, just two more slides. First, the accomplishments, right? So the question was asked kind of where Maryland stands. In many ways, Maryland is a national leader in programs and financial support, both in this space and honestly across all of our agricultural conservation. I know Senator Hester is very familiar with our conservation grants. There are a number of ways the department is actively through the state, has a robust set of programs and assistance. And this is just another example of where the department and the farm community have identified a need. And the state has been, willing to be that partner, right? So we're recognized for that national leadership in a lot of ways. We have obligated over $15 million through the program. So every year we often pick 1 to 2 projects, right? Where you can kind of see the funding details of how that is broken down, but cumulatively at a point of a little over $15 million of state investment that has been made in addition to kind of obviously the private sector's investment. We are funding diverse projects. So a number of technologies, animal types, so that can be equine, dairy, poultry, all of them have been funded through this, right? So it's not exclusive to any one sector of the animal agriculture. And the technologies are very diverse in geography, right? So we've had projects, Western and Eastern Shore, any number of locations, right, where we are willing to work. And I have included some slides in the presentation with details about all of the project. I know for sake of time today, we don't need to go into it, but there are some additional slides if you're interested in any particular project, right, that was included with the slide deck. So then for opportunities, this is where maybe we can spend some more time at the end, where I think really first to me is recognition, right? So the way the statute is currently written and a way that the projects are selected at the moment is very focused on both nutrient management and nutrients to the Chesapeake Bay, right? Certainly the state has a long history and obligations as it relates to water quality. Nowhere in the statute does it talk about selection of processes or projects, related to climate resilience, community benefits that would be associative of environmental justice, or really making sure that there's engagement with the communities. And I really feel like that's the next space where we need to think about how does the program and the technologies not only address on-farm and water quality, but how are we thinking about this as part of our climate resilience and kind of a pathway for the state to think about these within that scope, and really thinking about that renewable energy portion, right, for the education piece. These are renewable technologies, right? We often think about solar when I sit in other conversations about renewable energies. All of these can be considered renewable and are part of that tier 1 renewables. So how do we bring understanding and recognition both to the legislature, local decision makers, the community, to really understand the full benefits of these technologies and what they can provide to the community, and particularly with our utility partners, right? That has been, I think, one of the hardest partnerships, is making sure that the utility sector, when we're talking about putting these technologies onto the grid and working with those connection agreements. These are nuanced enough that there's some real education there. And I think the Senate Bill 808 that Andrew mentioned will go a long way of creating some common language and some guidance, but there's still more, I think, that we could participate in and see some real benefits from. Our third opportunity is quantifying the benefits, right? How do we know we can monitor at the project site, but there's less data kind of broadly speaking about the benefits of these technologies, both from a sequestration and emission standpoint. So when the state is thinking about investment and cost effectiveness and value, right, how do we bring that science and monitoring data as part of that conversation? So that's a third. And then fourth is the opportunity, right, of the economics. One of the things I've seen over the course of this program for the last decade, the farm scale technology is working for the farm. What we're often finding, though, is that the vendor, the private entity that is co-locating with the farm, that is not as economically viable to that private industry, right? So they often want to think about scaling to a regional or a state approach for the business solution. And that's where that kind of transition is broader than the fund, but is also an opportunity, I think, for the state to think, how do we support that transition and what those opportunities are to keep these technologies growing and scaling for the benefits that they provide, and begin to think about kind of at that scale, what is the appropriate other barriers that seem to be in place for being able, like I say, make that transition. So I leave that as places where we can just kind of talk and dig in a little bit later, but I'm going to stop there, and then Senator Hester, if you had some questions you want me to begin thinking about, or other members, happy to hear those.
Alicia, that was great. And one of my questions was going to be about kind of the data and assessment that you've done. But then on your next slide, you showed that there was a link to that report that UVM has done. If you could send us that link, because I couldn't click on it in the presentation.
Yes, it's linked in the presentation, but I'll make sure to get that to y'all. That was some work the university did. Yes, absolutely.
Right. And then the second thing that maybe you could think about is, I mean, the opportunities that you flagged seem like really good opportunities. And I don't know if that's a discussion here or offline, but you're talking about updating the statute that authorizes the fund, correct?
I think that could be part of it. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So how about anybody else? Anybody else have questions they want Alicia to ponder?
Just the same question about, what if, besides that one bill that was mentioned, if there's anything else that could be useful. Thank you.
Okay. And so let's move on then to our third speaker on this panel about agriculture. Hold on one second. I'm just finding my agenda. Chris, is Chris here?
Yes, ma'am. I'm here.
Awesome. So Chris is the Accelerator Program Director for F3 Tech. And I've heard amazing things about your work. So hopefully you'll tell us about it, but we will turn it over to you.
Great. Just give me 1 second to put the slideshow on. All right. Can you see that well?
We can.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Senator Hester, and so it's a pleasure to be here at the first part of this meeting and the importance of what we wanted to discuss today related to this committee, which we were glad to hear about. So to jump right in, our program was started about 20 years ago as part of an initiative on the Eastern Shore, and the F3 component of it began in 2018 to focus on agricultural technology development. And where we've gone over the years has been quite interesting as it relates to where we are today, and I think very relevant to a lot of the discussions that we want to be a part of. Our team is composed of a lot of individuals that are from industry, some still are, including myself in various ways. And the goal of the program has been to more so focus on helping early and late stage development of new innovations and companies in the areas of agricultural technology, which have really grown over time, with ag biotech obviously being a big part of it today, and our reason for being here. And the focus of our program is somewhat different than most in that we don't exist to educate as much as we do to assure success. And what we really focus on is providing a lot of federal and state supported resources related to business advisory services to early stage companies. And where we think this makes the most sense is the fact that what we do that's significantly different is focused with industry first in understanding where their areas of need or investment are, and then reach out to the community to find new technologies that we think best represent their interest, helping to guarantee a better path to success for the companies that we work with. So with that said, where we think this is very relevant to this discussion today on ag biotech, as we call it, was to explain what that really is and how that relates to our work and where we think Maryland falls in that part of the ecosystem and can succeed for the future. So in a simple fashion, obviously these words are made up of quite a few bits and pieces of others as an acronym, but in simple terms, it's based on really harnessing technology that's coming out of general areas of biotech. Some could originate in ag or in human health, but focusing those, many times they're quite broad in being able to deal with either plant and animal or synthetic types of biology, and using those technologies to focus more on agriculture for the development of not only our supply chain, but healthcare. And this is a really important part of the initiative, which some of you may have heard of globally, called One Health. And it really, in our review and kind of definition of this aspect, it's the basis for the achievement of One Health success. Because what we know is that we need to be able to use technologies more fluidly amongst all various sectors that relate to, in the end, our health, and how that relates to the entire supply chain. So as we look at what we think is most important in this conversation in economic development and with Maryland as a focal point, what we really look at is, as I think Senator Hester mentioned earlier, the $20 billion aspect of biotechnology, but a subsector part of that of how we think that ag biotech components as well, building on the success of which Maryland already has within the biotech area, lend itself to an area that we have obviously focused and invested in through our organization, and would like to continue to do so in a greater fashion. The really interesting approach from the economic development point is we already really know the answers. So this isn't much of a new discussion. It's more of putting pen to paper and putting boots on the ground. And in terms of focusing on the ag subsector of biotechnology, where we think that is most important in the state is really looking at increasing ag biotech related sciences. And this is based on a lot of conversations that we have had with the state university system and others including HBCUs and Manners chapters, of which we have a new program that is funded by the MBDA. And really where it kind of speaks to is what universities tend to do to compete, which is to attract key researchers. And the goal with that and looking at things at a high level is we're trying to really kind of bring this from two different angles, which is we're very much in a position right now where the resources on the ground are going to determine who we can attract and how much output we can obtain in that sector. But we need to start at the top by increasing research interest in those areas, funding towards these particular programs. Students obviously come along with that process as we increase things at the top level. That eventually then at the end leads to further innovation, IP development, and other research that can then eventually enter the commercial market. What's also important, we think, from an economic development standpoint is increasing local biomanufacturing, which is a main component of F3's current project, which is an ag biotech facility, which we have located in Easton, where we took the initiative to develop and invest in a facility with federal support that includes 2 ISO 7 clean rooms for early stage companies or those coming out of academia to have external, separate independent space to really kind of advance their pilot and early stage manufacturing in a way that they wouldn't be able to in other fashions without obtaining a lot of significant investment. So we saw this as a really big point in terms of the work that we do through the accelerator as keeping those involved in that on a path and in Maryland, which is obviously an area where we struggle. So in terms of the next areas, in terms of the trends that we see developing, obviously ag as a component of the biotech sector is quite significant. A lot of these technologies, as we said, already exist. It's a matter of what we're using them for. And the importance of it is very much related to where our success then in an innovation ecosystem, as well as promoting biomanufacturing, as well as skills upgrades are concerned within the workforce. But there are a very large number of areas. Don't really need to promote all of them, but what I have on our presentation is an indication of the areas where these things could be used. The nice part about this, and as we discuss our involvement with biotech and ag, is it really encompasses a much larger area than people realize. Because as I said earlier, the human health component and the general health aspect comes through what happens initially with livestock and agriculture. We're looking at everything from environmental impact to remediation, to disease control, to energy. So it's a very diverse aspect. When we think at the end of the day, people mention agriculture, think about a stalk of corn and how we can make that grow better. How that really relates to the use of technology down the supply chain, and where a lot of those developments can come from, allowing us to not have to focus on something so specific as the commodity world, but more so what can we do with the resources that we have locally to focus on technology development. Mike, would love for you to jump in maybe on the next 2 slides related to workforce and some Maryland aspects before we go into some final stories of biotech success.
Happy to do so. Thanks, Chris. Sorry to interject myself, but Chris asked me to cover these 2 slides. I'm the executive director for the Eastern Shore Entrepreneurship Center. We can't talk about ag biotech as an economic development activity without also correspondingly talking about the workforce that the growth of this sector will require to be successful. And so this is a real opportunity, especially for our rural areas of Maryland, because ag biotech's need for land and proximity to our traditional industries in ag. So it's an opportunity for a critical mass of activity to occur. And it also provides opportunity for workforce in that not a lot of the jobs don't require college degree. Many of these workers, especially in the manufacturing side of ag biotech, need skills that they can acquire at the community college level. skills that allow them to know how to work in a biotech lab, and also how to use biotech lab equipment. But a lot of this currently exists in the state at some of our community colleges. I know Montgomery, Howard, and I think Frederick already have MHEC approved curriculum. So some of this curriculum needs to be expanded to our more outlying rural community colleges. But the problem is they need access to lab equipment or lab infrastructure. Which we could mitigate by allowing, for example, in the ag biotech facility we're developing in Easton, allow them to utilize our space for that hands-on component of the curriculum that they otherwise might get on the college campus. But again, it's an opportunity for us also, where am I, in terms of Maryland's future. I think that the state hopefully will begin to recognize through our pilot efforts to validate the opportunities that exist with ag biotech. We have, as Chris mentioned, acquired some federal funding to help us initiate on a bootstrap level this 6,000 square foot facility that will have 2 labs. We're now in discussions developing a memorandum of understanding with the University of Maryland Eastern Shore and with Salisbury University to create an Eastern Shore sort of coalition around ag biotech, creating a greater priority at the university level among their principal investigators, their faculty, their graduate students, to focus on ag biotech, increase the volume of SBIR funding that we attract, and then our facility would provide that lab space that allows them to transition from the university lab into a lab that will allow them to start production and enter the market. So we're looking to submit applications to the Build Our Future Fund at the Commerce Department, as well as to TEDCO's Equitech Growth Fund, hopefully again to get some additional support. But again, it doesn't get us past the bootstrap component. If this is something that needs to be a priority for the state, obviously it's going to require a more targeted and concentrated investment by the state. Again, we want to see, at least we'd like to see ourselves competing against our fellow neighbor, North Carolina, that has been really active in this space. We partner and collaborate with NC Biotech facility down there relative to some of the companies we work with. But I think Chris, if I can just put a couple words in his mouth, is tired of working with companies that complete our program and then move to places like Boston, North Carolina, or Iowa, or California, where there is manufacturing infrastructure. This is Maryland's weakest point. We don't have manufacturing infrastructure for small and medium-sized biotech companies. And so this would be helpful if we as a state would figure out a strategy to address this. So Chris, I'll pass it back to you.
Thanks, Mike. I think the points here that Mike made are really important to this overall discussion from our side, which is, you know, when we discuss agriculture here, obviously we're not a major commodity state in that play, but we are a very well-positioned state in terms of the ability to generate and develop technology, ideas, talent, and federal policy and advocacy. And what's important here, which I think is a good way to convey it, is we don't have to be the largest user of everything, but we can pilot and develop many things. And as you can see on this part of the presentation, we lead in NIH research, but we are lacking in venture capital and lab space. And that was part of what we were looking at that I'll discuss and give you a few examples of here next of why we thought this was really important. So to give you an idea, we have 2 different companies that we wanted to just show you today that already demonstrate the efficacy of what we're doing and organizations we've worked with and why we thought this was important. Our Ag Biotech Research Facility is really a first in that there are many places that offer free lab space, and we work with a lot of those. But once an organization needs to move from that lab space into a pilot production facility, there are no facilities that we're aware of in the country that exist to provide aseptic clean room facilities in that capacity to be able to do true production for regulatory approval as well as initial sale. So as far as the two companies we're discussing, and one of them will be important to that facility aspect, we're already working with companies that are developing new types of medicines out of agriculture in combining in this ag biotech capacity the ability to create new drugs in areas that are extremely innovative and developing a lot of IP that have originated here. That first one is Lactea, which is based in Frederick, which is working very interestingly with the dairy industry to be able to develop the first FDA-approved therapeutics out of those materials as a naturally occurring product that can be developed much faster, more rapidly, and locally. Mycologics is a second company. They are developing, again, kind of from a very interesting local capacity. They've taken a bacteria out of the bay that we all normally know about in the summer that grows quite heavily when the water gets warm, but that have made it safe and turned its capabilities into a naturally derived antifungal for use in agriculture. And when we talk about these types of concepts in the beginning, there are a lot of big words, but at the end of the day, we thought these were really good examples of what that really means, which is taking a lot more of our natural resources that we know of, that we traditionally used in the past, and focusing them towards types of biotechnologies that can enhance our workforce opportunities as well as manufacturing. So in closing, I hope I'm not over too much on this, what we think is really important here from the Maryland standpoint in a much more general sense is the importance of ag biotech beyond just the biotech component of it is that it mixes a larger area of capabilities and opportunities that are really relevant to everything we all know today. As we look at zoonotic disease, of which COVID was part of, and many other things are, this is an area that has been quite significantly expanding, obviously, in the last few years, but is a main driver of this technology development. Obviously, there's a lot of research on the human health side in Maryland, less on the animal, but an area that doesn't require any change to compete in or to be able to develop new areas that we think are impactful for the state. So thank you again. If you guys have any questions on the facility that we're building and how we think that could be a great pilot project for Maryland to promote next year, we're happy to discuss it later.
Thanks so much, Chris and Mike. That was really, truly fascinating. We've got probably 15 minutes left combined for Q&A. Does anybody have a specific question for Mike or Chris? They want to give them a couple minutes to noodle on? Delegate Feldmark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So thank you to all of the presenters, really interesting information. And I guess as we think about ag biotech, one of the questions I have is, agriculture as an industry is full of technology, right? And I think that's one of the things that a lot of folks who are not actually familiar with agriculture don't realize, how much technology has infiltrated agriculture in very positive ways, right? And I know there's a bit of a tension sometimes around the way farmers can become sort of beholden as customers of the technology, right? That there are more things that are beyond their direct control, in terms of recognizing an industry with, high risk and tight margins, some of the technology vendors that the farmers are customers of are not always forgiving or cooperative to those realities, right? And just sort of recognizing that and wondering what what, if anything, you're doing sort of in partnership with small farmers as you're working on these technologies and understanding how they're deployed to make them accessible and sustainable from the small farmer's perspective. And that's my dog, excuse me.
So if you'd like, Senator, I can lead off with that question and then jump through the other three if it's helpful.
Sounds good.
So, Senator, to your point, agriculture is light years from where it was in the early days, and quite oftentimes people will romanticize it as some person out there on an old Massey Ferguson. But we're at the precision agriculture days where they're on such a very thin margin that we really need to be aware that they're incorporating every bit of technology that they can that's accessible to them. What have we done to assist them? Last session, you all passed the legislation that required the state agencies to work together to put in one encompassing document all of the permits that are required for a farmer to put together an on-farm composting facility. What are the permits required? What are the federal and state grants that are out? And what is the useful technology out there that they can partner with? So from a legislative side, I feel like Maryland is putting a lot of effort in to try to assist in that effort. There was two other questions, and I'll try to jump through them real quick. Because look, many of you know me. I'm happy to come sit down and chat with you. And Senator Hester has given me questions that I could spend an hour on individually. So I will be very brief on them. As far as green hydrogen, the Biden administration has put out over $350 million to 7 different hydrogen hubs, Delaware being identified as one of them. The goal is to work with the research industry as well as the university systems to develop green hydrogen to where it's cost effective. Right now, we can take biogas coming from our facilities and it can be converted to hydrogen. The challenge is right now, it's not quite cost effective. It's kind of like, if you remember the early days of solar, panels were exorbitantly expensive and they were subsidized, and the price continued to drop as the technology developed. Green hydrogen has great promise, and what I find exciting is that the fuel that we're producing right now at our recycling facility, it's not only a bridge fuel, it not only allows us to transition off of fossil fuels, but it's going to be the component of the next generation of fuels as far as green hydrogen. But the biofuels right now, great promise. Maryland just opened their first RNG truck filling station at Seabird Marine Terminal, and it has great promise for use in fleet transport, marine transport, as well as electrification gains. PFAS, major hot topic, as you all know. We're really good at measuring it in water. We're still trying to develop the technology for measuring in solids. There is great promise within the industry of different processes that can be added into the industrial process to mitigate PFAS, but they're still at the experimental phase and quite costly. But that continues to develop. And I know MDE is working very diligently on trying to developing the testing protocol and measurements. My favorite question from Senator Kaiser was, what can the state do? I would be remiss to say, if I didn't again say, Maryland is leading in the nation. I give a lot of tours now to congressional members, senior members of the EPA, White House advisors. They really look at Maryland as basically the starting grounds for developing this new technology. As a matter of fact, Rod Snyder, when he came out to our facility, I had spoken to him about taking some Maryland legislation and adding it into the Farm Bill as an amendment. And they went ahead and he said, I'm just going to use the terms you've codified in our food waste recycling report. And I'm starting to see that being adopted by other states. So other states are also taking our legislation. Last year, Senator Servo from Virginia took 3 Maryland bills, rolled them into one, and put them before their General Assembly. But what can we do? I mean, we're making great strides. What's the next step? The Climate Solutions Now law that passed in 22 required MDE to develop a Maryland climate pollution reduction plan that they released this year. I would highly encourage you all to kind of look over it. It's, I think, a 92-page document, but there's several recommendations that are included within that report for things that we can do legislatively. One of the actions items was to promote methods for recovering energy from waste, including anaerobic digestion. So there's still things that we can do to streamline and make the industry continue to grow. An important piece, one of the recommendations was to develop a clean energy standard, and I know that's going to be a hot topic this session. I would implore you, when we're talking about clean energy, quite oftentimes we're looking at solar and wind, and sometimes biofuels are left out of the discussion. As we develop those clean energy standards, it's going to be important that we look encompassingly at all forms of renewable energy and how we can maximize their use and develop the industry. Again, I'm happy to come sit down and chat with you individually on what are the challenges, what are the goals, what are the benefits, and what can be done. And again, I very much appreciate the opportunity to come before you today. I think I got inside the buzzer.
Just barely. Thanks, Andrew. Let's go back to Alicia. Would you like to answer Delegate Feldmark's question or Chair
Yeah, I was
Kaiser's
gonna
question?
say, great piggyback. So let me start with a couple examples for Delegate Feldmark's. So
Okay, it looks like we've just lost audio for you, Alicia.
can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm so sorry. So a couple of examples of where the department is working with both on the technology side but small farms with small farms in mind. So on the animal waste technology, a project we selected just last year that's still in construction phase. So happy to host an event there at a future date. It's a small dairy. They have 125 cow operation, which is small, right? And so they are doing a modular anaerobic digester, which means the scale of it is really sized to that size farm operation, which is fairly unusual. If you look at kind of national projects, smaller dairies don't usually meet the economies of scale for AD systems, and this is a test of that scenario, right? How do we make this kind of a standard operation and accessible economically for medium and small farms that we really want to make sure that we help to sustain on the Maryland landscape, right? So we have examples like that. We have programs where we're working with the equine industry, where those are often small operations themselves, right? Where there are manure management needs. How do we help partner with those operations to address compost, remove, transport, those types of manure, right? So we have examples of programs where we're working in that space. And then a third example, MDA is just aware but not a partner, is through the USDA Climate Smart Commodities grants that were just announced last year, right? This is through the Inflation Reduction Act spending. They are looking for smaller farms, growing feedstock, especially for anaerobic digestion systems, right? So how do we bring small farms, small growers aggregating their crops in a way that are then being used as a feed source to technologies, right? So there's definitely, I think, a lot of interest in making sure both the viability of the crop, but the kind of bigger picture of where these technologies fit in that space is a part of a conversation MDA is very interested in participating. I'll piggyback on what I heard Andrew say, though. What's going to be critical in the conversation is, as the farm grower, the operator is taking on not just the technology, but partnering with industry and others, there has to be a financial win for that farm. And so the way that the state is thinking about investing in capital, but particularly the way we're trying to make sure that this is considered a renewable energy source, the guidance documents, clarity and permitting processes, those are absolutely going to help. But the state really should still make sure that we're thinking about this as a portfolio of renewable energies, and how do we help farms be a part of that solution in such a way that that energy production is not just income to the farm, but also offsetting where the state is trying to head under its renewable portfolio standards. And often these technologies get, like he says, I think kind of out diminished in the conversation a little bit. And I think it would be valuable to make sure that they're front and center when we're thinking about the suite of renewables.
And I'll just do a real quick response to Delegate Feldmark's question in terms of trying to lower the threshold of access to technology for farmers. You wouldn't believe how many startups we work with that end up going nowhere because of the price point of their innovation and technology. And so it's a non-starter. Something's not going to go to market unless the market can afford it. I think also there's a related issue. It's not just about the price point, but it's about the adoption level, the comfort level of farmers adopting new innovations and technologies. In many ways, that's an age issue, a generational issue. As a lot of our farmers are aging out, the younger farmers are more adapting to innovation and technology and utilizing it. So it's always a constant struggle trying to make access as affordable as possible. That's the best I can answer. It's really an industry issue.
Thanks. Really, really thoughtful answers to a great question from Delegate Feldmark. I was just kind of pausing to think about, the career emphasis that Maryland's blueprint, the blueprint for Maryland's future has in it, and how as we look at the verticals in our career standards, updating, agriculture and making sure that the technology and the biotech kind of transition falls in there is something that we should probably be talking about. Cool. So that was a great overview of what's going on in ag. We have one fabulous presenter on biotechnology and healthcare. And so I'd like to invite us to turn it over to Carter McClure, the Regional Innovation Officer for the Greater Baltimore Committee. And I understand you have over 15 years of entrepreneurship and small business and technology startup kind of expertise. So we're really looking forward to hearing from you. So
Thank you so much, Senator Hester. Thank you very much. And it's a lot less exciting than it sounds with the experience. Believe me. Good morning, everyone. My name is Carter McClure. And as Senator Hester mentioned, I'm the Vice President and Regional Innovation Officer for the Greater Baltimore Committee. I've only been in this role for 6 months, but did similar work in Philadelphia and in Northern Virginia around the biotech ecosystem and supporting startups and making sure that they're able to grow quickly. So this is an important opportunity for us to talk about the current state of the biotech ecosystem in the region, as well as some of the barriers, opportunities, and trends that exist. So thanks everyone for your time today. Can everyone see the screen okay? Perfect. So to start, the Baltimore region and Maryland in general continues to grow its biotech hub position. In 2023 alone, this region had over 400 tech and biotech startups, and 64% of those were focused on healthcare and information technology. As Senator Hester mentioned, $20 billion flows through the biotech economy for the state of Maryland. And in 2023, there was over $500 million that was invested in life sciences, digital health, artificial intelligence, and advanced manufacturing. So this is it, just to remind you with this overview of the importance of the biotech ecosystem. None of this would be possible without the world-class research and talent that exists. You think about institutions like Hopkins, University of Maryland, conducting more than $3.4 billion in research annually. And the strategic location to NIH, FDA, NIST, makes it the ideal environment for collaboration, regulatory approvals, and direct on-ramps for academic research and commercialization. The NIH alone does over $30 billion in grants a year. So all these are important parts of the ecosystem, but even with these strong regional assets, there are still critical barriers that we must address for this kind of momentum to continue. So if we're fully going to unlock the potential as a biotech hub, there's some areas that we really have to dig into. So to start, let's talk about infrastructure. And you're going to hear some of the same things that Mike just mentioned from F3 Tech, because some of this is a national issue. So limited lab space. Over the last 15 years, the infrastructure, the vacancy rate was less than 5% in the Baltimore region alone. And it got as low as 1% just in the last year. And, while you may think of that as a good thing, that actually creates bottlenecks for startups to be able to continue their growth. If they don't have space, and it's not in the Baltimore region, then they'll, consider Gaithersburg, they'll consider Rockville. But more importantly, and even worse, if they can't find it there, then they're going to leave the state. So as Mike mentioned, we're also competing with North Carolina now, with Virginia in a heavy way, with Austin, of course, Boston's been there, San Francisco, for making sure that we retain these firms that are growing quickly. We don't want them leaving the state after they reach a certain level of their growth. Combine that with the fact that, post 2020, now the cost to build out live infrastructure is 20 to 30% higher than what it was before then. So when you do have startups who may have space that's available now because there's been some ease in the bottleneck, it's more expensive than it was prior to 2020. So think about this as the same way you think about some of the challenges that exist in the residential housing market, right? Less supply means an increase in price, and that ultimately ends up creating even more of a bottleneck for growth and opportunity for the biotech firms that are in the regions. So this is an important thing to think about. In terms of capital, the reason why I have this funnel here is because, as I mentioned, the $500 million in deal flow, 2023, we're seeing less of that, right? And this is not just a Maryland issue, this is a national issue. So similar dollar amounts, but less deal flow. So, what we notice is that there's early stage opportunity for research, for resources, and even some later stage opportunities, but there really needs to be more mid-stage funding that exists within the ecosystem. So there's a real need for more mid-funnel growth. Some of the same problems around the shortages in skilled workforce. We stay anywhere between a gap of 2,800 to 3,000 vacant biotech jobs in this region. So you think about it this way, the life science industries between 2015 and 2020 grew by 30%, and it's projected to grow, it's a $189 billion industry nationwide. It's expected to be close to $300 billion by 2030. So there's going to be more jobs that need to be filled. And if we're not addressing this problem now, that is only going to continue to exacerbate itself as an additional problem. So where are the opportunities? Well, in terms of infrastructure, one of the things that you see happening right now is, there's great lab space that's come online with University of Maryland's Wexford Connect Labs. 4MLK is opening in November. Hopefully, some or all of you can make the grand opening for that. Johns Hopkins continues to expand its footprint in biolabs. So the state, we need to support those initiatives. So anytime there's an opportunity also to discourage what we call biotech companies that are a flight risk. If there's ways that if the state can support them staying and growing in the area, and expanding on resources that already exist, like the TEDCO Maryland Biotech Investment Tech Tax Credit, that's going to help us also serve as a foundation for more funding coming online. Oftentimes, in today's environment, uh, private equity funders, they're waiting for a foundation before they actually come in with their investment. So bolstering that with seed capital is a great way to ensure that these resources stay within the region. And when we think about the opportunity for upskilling and reskilling in the workforce, very similar to what Mike was saying, we have to position ourselves where, the average person now is not just thinking about at age 18 graduating from high school and going to college. We have to be able to offer micro-credentialing, focused training that are done in partnership with the industry partners, partnering with the community colleges and local institutions to make sure people have specific access within a 6-month, 9-month, 12-month time frame to be able to upskill and grow in the region. That's an extremely important one that we'll need to be able to close the gap that I was talking about earlier. So I'm just going to talk more so about national trends, because I know Stephanie and Ileana's group is going to talk some about some of the trends in the region, and I don't want to make either one of them mad at me. So on a national level, at the end of the day, we continue to see this kind of intersection of AI and biotech, specifically around drug discovery. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Baltimore Tech Hub's role in this too in the next slide. But mobile health, I'm just going to boil it down to really, really augmenting and leaning into opportunities to increase digital health outcomes. Because what that's going to do is that's not just going to improve access, but it's also going to help us to understand some of the comorbidities that exist in our region and help us to support founders who traditionally are not able to reach those individuals. When we think about it from a digital health or mobile health perspective, we'll be able to provide more opportunity. So, leaning into that model, it kind of building on some of the work that's already been done is a great way for us to continue. Mike mentioned, gene therapy companies, in this region, they continue to develop personalized treatments that are tailored to specific genetic profiles in patients. That is only going to continue to grow, not just in the Maryland region, but nationally. I'm thinking specifically about Philadelphia. There's a lot of work that's happening there. It's also happening in the Virginia region. So we want to make sure that we maintain a lead in this area. So those are important areas for us to watch as far as trends. Just very quickly, I just wanted to make sure that everyone for the Baltimore Tech Hub, that they understand what the role is for the Baltimore Tech Hub in addressing some of these barriers and opportunities. It's a hub and spoke approach with a biomanufacturing core facility in Harford County at the middle of this. That facility will lean into the Aberdeen Proving Grounds unique position and work that they're doing around modular manufacturing. Specifically, how can we create an environment where manufacturing is not just happening on site, but in other smaller satellite spaces around it, all addressing the DoD's priority around national security at the biomolecular level. So that's a place where there's an opportunity. And what we call the Anchor Innovation Hub is essentially the feeder for this process. Those are all the anchor institutions, but they're all working in concert to make sure that the different biotech startups that are part of the core are diverse and thinking about it through a lens of equity, because that's a big part of the mission of the Baltimore Tech Hub. So we have a Baltimore Biotech Jobs Initiative where in the next 10 years, we're saying we're going to have 11,000 people who are traditionally overlooked, trained, cradle to career process in biotechnology, which is a huge part of making sure that there's workers to support all these initiatives that we're talking about. And the uprise for Equitech is creating an ecosystem where non-traditional founders can feel comfortable being represented in this space, and also making sure that they have access to the resources that the Anchor Innovation Hub is able to provide that traditionally they would not have access to. So just a quick reminder on the Baltimore Tech Hub's mission. We see Maryland as being the global model for equity, commerce, and artificial intelligence powered biotech innovation. There's no reason why that can't happen. And we want other states to look to Maryland to being the lead in that. And we have an aggressive 10-year expectation that we're not only going to expand lab infrastructure with the Converge space that I mentioned in Harford County, but we're going to train 11,000 biotech workers. And then as a result of the Baltimore Tech Hub, there's going to be 1,000 new startups in this ecosystem, of which 40% will be represented from non-traditional backgrounds. And I think that's it. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. I had just a couple questions, and maybe we can see if anybody else has, our team has questions. But I was fascinated by kind of an answer. Sorry, I'm babbling. Several times you and previous speakers said, we have to retain and keep the startups here.
Yeah.
And I was curious if it's just the capital investment, in the facilities that I've heard mentioned a couple of times, or if there's more to keeping them here. Like, is it actually an affordable housing issue or something else? I was wondering if you could speak just briefly to that question.
That is a great question. And if it was related to the affordable housing, I think we'd see less of the startups going to Boston and San Francisco. I think the biggest part of the bottleneck, it's infrastructure and it's capital. It's capital. Because while they have funding, we have these support systems that are in place early stage. After they grow to a certain point, they can't continue that growth. We have great talent here, but for them to grow the way they need to, they're looking for more money and they're looking for more space.
Okay. And so hopefully the space issue will I mean, that's part of what the Baltimore Tech Hub is addressing.
That's right.
So what does, the state is entering a period where, we're facing some budget difficulties. Is there another way that we can, incentivize capital to flow, that where it's not state dollars?
There is. I think, one of the things that when you think about places like Boston, it's not just their presence on the national stage, it's their presence also, just internationally. So, when we can support more delegations who are serious about partnerships, partnering with these startups after they reach a certain level, so that they're able to grow that presence and do things like the soft landing program. That's one way to facilitate that without it being specific to capital. And anything that we can do to support collaboration between some of the amazing thing that's happening in our research institution and what's happening on the industry level, we could do that too, because that's something that the EDA did mention as feedback for our region. They want to see more industry partners involved, and the state has a lot of influence in being able to set the stage for that, encouraging more industry involvement in this work.
Okay. Definitely something for us to work on. Any questions from others on the committee? Well, then it looks like I want to thank you very much, Carter, for your presentation. I know that we have many members who are watching online, and of course this gets recorded. So we'll collect questions, also and send them around when we get them afterwards. So moving on then to our final panel. Give me 2 seconds to pull this up. We are now going to hear about the future of biotechnology from both the Department of Commerce and the Maryland Tech Council. And so I don't know how the Department of Commerce is working. We've got whether it's kind of one presentation or three. We have 3 speakers lined up, I know. Dr. Stephanie Trope from the Director of Life Sciences, Jennifer Lahat, the Managing Director for Policy Research and Government Affairs, and Dr. Desidero, the Office of Strategic Industries and Entrepreneurship. So whoever in the Department of Commerce wants to take the lead, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. That will be me, Stephanie Tropp, and I will have our Director of Strategic Industries, Uliana Desiderio, and our Policy Director, Jen Lahat, on the line as well to help answer questions. And just give me a moment to, okay, my screen is showing. Is that right? Okay.
Yes, we can see your screen. Thank you so much.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Well, first, thank you so much for inviting us to present at this committee meeting today. We're really excited following your introduction, Chair Hester, at the beginning, that it's been a while since you've talked about biotech in this committee, and we're really glad to bring some attention back to it because it is such a critical industry, for the people working in it, for the state, and for our health globally. And we have a huge impact on all of that from the industry in Maryland. Okay, so we're following some really specific talks on ag biotech and biotech kind of focused on the Baltimore region. And so I think what we'll be able to do from here is zoom out and look at these issues at a higher level, at a state level, and focus on all of biotech and also a little bit of life sciences, which is a little bit bigger than just biotech. So to step back, why is life sciences and biotech such a big, important industry here in Maryland? We're really excited and proud that we're ranked the #3 biopharma cluster last year, and that was reiterated this year in some important rankings. We've got thousands of companies here working on life sciences and biotechnology products and solutions, as well as lots of organizations we touched on and federal labs, which we've gotten to talk about as well. And what's really exciting is that these impacts are not just local, but global, and they touch your life. So if you see you might recognize some of those logos of companies that we have here in Maryland. Maybe some of you have gotten or will get the Novavax COVID vaccine that's on the market this fall. And you'll also recognize some other names on there like GlaxoSmithKline and Emergent, all really big players here in Maryland and globally. So we've already touched on a lot of these important factors that have made and continue to make Maryland a really great location for life sciences businesses to come and thrive. So zooming out a little bit from things that we've talked about in ag bio and biotech, in our office, we focus on life sciences as a whole. And then Uliana, our Senior Director of Strategic Industries, is also on the call. And she covers all the other verticals that Department of Commerce really focuses on as well. And we see a lot of overlap and interactions between them. So cybersecurity and manufacturing and agriculture and energy. So we all get to work together. But if we want to dive into the life sciences ecosystem that we have here in Maryland, part of why it is so successful is that we have great representation from all these different players, all these different sectors and subsectors within the industry. So when we're talking about biotechnology, we have not just the companies that are developing these therapeutic and diagnostic solutions, we also have all these service providers, the R&D services that help them to have the equipment that they need or the supplies they need. We have manufacturers here as well so they can manufacture their product in state. And then we also have growing strengths in digital health and medical technology, medical devices, which all kind of make this really complete ecosystem here in Maryland. And these innovators, these companies, and also at our academic institutions are working on solving a huge breadth of biomedical problems. And that's kind of what we'll hone in on here. But most prominently, we have the most amount of efforts in oncology and infectious disease and in neurology and neuroscience as well. So to orient you, one reason that this is a really successful industry in Maryland, and we're going to talk even more about jobs with Michelle Ferrone coming on next, that the industry is spread throughout the state. So we have representation all throughout Maryland, but really just to orient you, the biggest concentration is within this big triangle here. When we're looking at biotech, we have about half of our biotechnology companies in Montgomery County sprawling out from NIH. There's a lot of R&D going on here. There's also a significant concentration in Frederick, centered around Department of Defense and the military needs. And because there's so much space in this rural setting, we've got a lot more manufacturing there. A lot of facilities with hundreds of thousands of square feet of space to manufacture some of these products that might be being developed in Montgomery County. And then in Baltimore, we have a really exciting growing ecosystem that Carter touched on a lot, really anchored by our universities in Baltimore, Johns Hopkins and UMB. We also have particular strengths in manufacturing and medical devices coming out of Baltimore. So we've already touched quite a bit on the economic impact, which is really important in supporting this industry, important contributor to jobs, to GDP. It brings in a lot of money from federal contracts as well as VC dollars. And it also leads to creation of really advanced specialized infrastructure. And we're increasingly seeing focus on different hubs and communities being built around these specialized laboratory facilities. And this is throughout the state. So just to point out a couple of projects here in Baltimore City for MLK that Carter mentioned, but there's also lots of large developments going on in Frederick County and in Montgomery County that represent really huge investments right here in Maryland. So that was a point in time of what's going on in jobs and GDP, but just want to illustrate, if you look at the last 5 years, we continue to see steady job growth, stable jobs, both directly in the industry, as well as lots of jobs that are created throughout the supply chain induced by this industry. And I see the same with the contribution to GDP, steady and increasing. So we're looking towards that future with even more growth, and we want to be able to support that. So the challenges, really happy to see that the challenges that we wanted to share were reiterating, reinforcing what some of the other presenters have touched on. So I think we're all on the same page that in this industry, it's very expensive to take a product from an idea to market. It could be billions of dollars, expensive in money as well as time. We need that specialized workforce, which we talked about plenty, really expensive, specialized lab space and infrastructure. And then, externally, the industry is really at the will of different policy changes at lots of different levels. We have a lot of complexity in the regulatory approvals that are needed, especially when we're talking about biotech for human healthcare products. And our supply chain disruptions, we've really highlighted in these last few years with COVID, with the bridge, how sensitive the industry is to supply chain disruptions. But fortunately, our attention's been brought to that, and we're looking into improving that a lot more. So this is in general, and specifically, how do these issues impact Maryland? When we're looking at funding, kind of to reiterate the industry, ag biotech in Baltimore, things we've touched on, our companies and our institutions are very successful at bringing in non-dilutive funding, grant funding from NIH, those federal dollars. But we have a lower concentration here in this area of private venture capital. And so that gives us, a kind of different focus than some of the other hubs that we'll talk about later, where there are higher concentrations of venture capital in those regions. And our companies do really well at bringing in this private money, but it's a lot harder for them than it is when you're in Boston or San Francisco. On that workforce piece, we have the leading PhD STEM workforce in Maryland. We are limited in the density of experienced entrepreneurs to help lead these companies, and in more entry-level biomanufacturing jobs that Michelle will speak a lot more about. And as we sort of touched on also with questions after Carter's presentation, a challenge in attracting this workforce is that Maryland is not so well known to the workforce that we might be trying to attract from out of state and around the world. We touched on lab space as well. And then some of those other challenges that I mentioned, we don't have a lot of Maryland specific issues around those. So what are we doing to support the industry with these challenges? I just want to highlight a few programs, finance programs from the state, and these are specifically all from the Department of Commerce. Dollars that are in the form of tax credits and grants to support this biotech innovation all throughout that development pipeline. So our Maryland Innovation Initiative Fund, you might have seen press release about that this week. That's millions of dollars that are going to support endowed chairs at our universities that are performing really cutting edge research and also have a focus on entrepreneurship. We have our signature program, the Bio Tax Credit. There's also the Innovation Incentive Tax Credit, where we're trying to get at this challenge of attracting those those private dollars here to Maryland. And the way that this program works is when a private investor invests in a Maryland biotech company, we give a refund back to their investor. And that investor can be in Maryland or out of the state or even out of the country. So we're giving our Maryland companies a competitive edge to help bring in that money and incentivize that investment. We also have tax credits for R&D. Some new programs that we're really excited about that come through Commerce is our Manufacturing 4.0 program. That's not specific to life sciences and biotech, but it applies to different sectors, but it is available to our life sciences companies to support advanced manufacturing, and our Build Our Future pilot program, which is open now, and someone referenced, the F3 Tech presenters referenced as well. We also have job creation tax credits to help get at that workforce attraction. We partner closely with other organizations, with TEDCO, with the Maryland Stem Cell Research Fund, with the university system that runs the Maryland Industrial Partnerships Program. They have a lot of other programs as well. TEDCO is a leading source of venture capital. They recently ranked really highly in a study of venture capital firms, I think along the East Coast. And they have both grants and equity investment from early stage to look at feasibility of commercialization of biotech products, and their investment programs scale up as the companies grow. The Stem Cell Research Fund is related to TEDCO. It's also state funding, and the state has increased the amount of funding available through this research fund as well recently. Those are grants for stem cell and regenerative medicine. And another example program, this MIPS program, Maryland Industrial Partnerships. The way that works is we are also getting at some of these partnerships that Carter talked about, where companies can get research done with an investigator within the university system of Maryland for a very, very low cost. So those are some of the finance programs that we use to support our companies through these challenges. And as Commerce, we provide a number of other business development services as well. Touching on what Carter mentioned, we have specific programs geared towards exporting and international marketing. So we do take companies to trade shows domestically and internationally, and we're always looking to grow that because it's really valuable for our companies to get that visibility. So this state support, we're really happy to see that it goes towards helping attract investment. It helps to create jobs and retain those jobs because some of our programs also work to upskill, all can be applied to upskill workers. Some of our support, we can see directly how it goes to get healthcare solutions deployed to patients in our communities. And our state support can be accredited for reaching this #3 ranking of biopharma cluster. It was a goal of stakeholders throughout the state to get to that top 3 by 2023 was the goal, and we made it just in time. And just an example to illustrate the impact of some of the support, that biotax credit, our BITSI program, we're looking at a 5-year period from 2019 to 2023, which includes some interesting times in investment, because we had that huge surge of biotech and federal funding in COVID, and then since then really a stark decline in the availability of private capital globally with the economic challenges. So what we have done with this program is we've issued $44 million in tax credits to 669 investors. So that's 669 investors that we are getting to invest into companies in Maryland. That's a really wide reach. And with that credit, our companies brought in about $96 million. So over double in this case, and that was done by 89 Maryland biotech companies. So those are some of the things that we are doing, and here's how we compare to some of the other leading hubs. So this chart is from that Gen Eng News Biopharma Cluster ranking that came out this year, where we reiterated our #3 position. And these rankings are based on these 5 criteria: on NIH funding, VC funding, on the number of patents issued, the availability, the total amount of lab space in the area, and the number of jobs. So you can see where we're sitting right there at #3. And we have that #3 ranking because in this region, we far blew everyone else out of the water in terms of the number of patents. We have our equivalent #3 ranking of the amount of lab space and jobs. We are bringing in less NIH funding and less VC funding than our leaders of Boston and San Francisco, as well as some of the hubs that are behind us in these rankings. So we want to retain this and maybe even grow, but it gives us some ideas of the things that we can work on to continue to grow in these rankings and get more of that attraction in state, out of state, and around the world, of that attention. So what works? What has led to some of these hubs being really successful? There was a study done cited by that Gen Eng News article. When they studied the top hubs around the world, they all shared that they had received lots of early investment. They had high quality science, which we have with our universities, strong network of partners within and outside of the region, and multiple anchor institutions. They're not relying on just one big company. So when we look at #1, Boston, they have all these things. And they also have our infamous, they've marketed it really well. Everybody knows about the fact that the state fund had a $1 billion over 10-year investment in Massachusetts life sciences. They've done that program, that investment, but also really good marketing, which has been really critical. The Bay Area also has lots of money coming around. Their history is really rooted deeply in tech in Silicon Valley. So there's a really deep pool of investors.
Can I interrupt for a moment? I do want to ask a question, but I'd like to have you give you like 1 minute to wrap up at this point, and then I can ask my question.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So when we compare to some of our other regions, that really notable for state investment. North Carolina, which is behind us in the rankings, but they're growing really fast, and they make really good examples, I think, for us in a lot of the programs that they are implementing. So if we're looking to wrap up, I think workforce, Michelle will talk a lot more about after our presentation.
Any other highlights you need to hit?
Yeah, so I'll just wrap up here to point on some of the technology trends. And again, in agreement with the observations that Carter pointed out, as well as Mike and Chris, got really in the last few years advances in genomics that enable a lot more solutions in precision medicine and diagnostics. And Maryland has opportunity to lead here because, as I pointed out earlier, a lot of these applications are towards oncology and will be for the companies that are selling tools and services to those companies. Continuous manufacturing is a technology that can really be used here to improve the efficiency and lower the cost of some of the cell and gene therapy manufacturing being done. And all the advances in computing that are a big focus of the Tech Hub effort initiative that we're all coming around for. So we've got lots of assets that were really strong in some of these fields, in AI, in machine learning, in quantum computing. Maryland is a real leader, and in connectivity. And these can help us directly tap in to health initiatives at the state and the federal level. So it's presenting us some interesting opportunities to collaborate uniquely with FDA on some of their initiatives about bringing healthcare more broadly out of healthcare settings and into the home. So I can stop there.
All right, well, great. Thank you so much. I want to ask, my first question is an ask for information that doesn't have to be shared today, but in mentioning the biotech tax credit, I think the committee would be curious on, how many companies, what's the average amount, so forth. At one point in time, I know that one of the tax credits coming out of the department was sending less than a couple thousand to many hundreds of applicants, which does not seem like the best opportunity for the state to incentivize. So that can be, we can wait for that information. I heard you more than once mention that part of the goal was to move up in the rankings. We're number 3. I think I heard you mention that a couple times, that the goal for that to happen was by last year. When was that goal set?
Oh, that is a good question. I'm not sure if I know the answer to, but definitely.
It had been a number of years?
Yes, a number of years.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the last time we remember setting it as 2017, so it took 5 years.
Okay. I asked, unfortunately, I can't stay for the entire meeting today, and I can't listen to our last speaker, but I did want a chance to publicly acknowledge and thank my friend, the former Secretary Kelly Schultz, for being a part of that improvement. So thank you.
Thanks. We'll be happy to send you more information about the BITSI program and the program changes that happened a couple of years ago after doing a big study on some of those questions that you brought up.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thanks, Chair Kaiser. We know that you're on the way to the airport. So Stephanie, I just wanted to see, were the 2 other commerce folks, do they want to chime in just briefly before we move on?
This is Juliana. I just want to thank the committee for inviting us. I think staff did a really great job covering it. And we're here to answer any additional questions or provide any data. So thanks so much for having us.
Okay, that's great. I mean, I think that, and maybe you guys can think about this one, and I'll also take it offline because we're kind of running short on time. But my question was, back to, like, we set the goal and we've moved up to number 3. Like, how long did that take and how much did it cost? And then, I kept hearing about the lack of, like, investment. And so the same question I asked to Carter, like, is there a way that the state what can the state do, to increase, that investment, in this industry, in the state. So maybe, Stephanie, we can also follow up offline with kind of the data that Chair Kaiser asked for and the answer to that question.
Great. We're really happy to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you all being here. And for the great work that you're doing and driving us to number 3. Yeah. Okay, so let's go to our next next and final presentation, looking at the future of biotech. I'd like to introduce somebody who is not a stranger for sure. We have our former Secretary Schultz here to speak with us today, former Secretary of Commerce. And then is there somebody, we also have Andrew Vetter with the Maryland Tech Council. Are you both here?
So I'm Michelle Ferrone. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at the Maryland Tech Council.
Great. Okay. So which one of you would like to start?
So I'll be speaking. I know Kelly, unfortunately, is in another meeting. So I'm just gonna like Kylie go over some points, and then if you guys have any questions after that, you know, I'm happy to talk about those. So I'm only gonna talk a little bit about ag, and then we're gonna go right into workforce. And then again, if there's any questions, happy to talk.
Okay, sounds good.
So I have some points here, and as we've heard throughout the whole, program here in Maryland, we're proud to be at the forefront of the bioscience innovation ecosystem. Our state excels, as everybody has said, in university research, NIH funding, venture capital investments, and patent awards. And since 2018, Maryland's bioscience companies have increased their employment by 14%, surpassing national job growth and creating nearly 50,000 jobs across over 3,100 companies. And biotechnology is also revolutionizing agriculture, enabling the development of crops that can withstand environmental stresses. This innovation is essential in enhancing global food security, and also biotech crops engineered for drought and insect resistance lead to higher yields, reduced weights, and fewer carbon emissions. There are several Maryland Tech Company members that are making significant contributions to this growth that are here in Maryland. One company is called InTag. They provide sustainable aquaponic systems, engaging students in hands-on project-based learning in STEM, agriculture, and business. They collaborate with over 80 schools in Pennsylvania, here in Maryland, and Hawaii. Another company is Floroponics. They're transforming flower farming with its recirculating aquaponic and hydroponic systems. They grow over 20 flowers varieties, including the world's first aquaponic dahlia blooms. Also, the University of Maryland recently received $5 million from the NSF for NourishNet. It's a tech-driven initiative that utilizes the Quantum Nose, a portable food quality sensor and food loops, an app to optimize surplus food distribution and combat food insecurity. And one last Maryland Tech Council member that's in this space is the Bioengineer DEFCO. They operate Maryland's largest anaerobic digester, processing 125,000 tons of organic waste annually to produce renewable energy, addressing both clean energy production and food waste reduction. So as you can see, there's a lot of the Maryland Tech Council members that are part of this grouping. I just wanted to talk a little bit about what everybody's been talking about, workforce in Maryland. We all know it's a critical issue facing Maryland's life sciences sector. Our workforce shortage. There are 33 available workers for every 100 open positions, and this is severely limiting our growth in this industry. To combat these challenges, the Maryland Tech Council has developed a strategic plan to establish a biopharmaceutical manufacturing skills and training center model that can serve as a global benchmark. The new BioHub Maryland Training and Education Center at Montgomery County will be equipped with the state-of-the-art industrial bioprocessing equipment. We're going to be offering hands-on competency-based training through a license of curriculum through NIBERT. And this approach allows prospective employees to learn by doing, directly addressing the needs of our industry. I'm sitting in it now. We've just moved in July, and we're going to have an open house soon. We have over 8,200 square feet of lab space, and it's been stocked with Thermo Fisher, Sartorius, and Pure Flow equipment, and we're very excited to start. Right now, we have a cohort that's happening. They're in the back in the lab right now. We're teaching 7 students, so we're very excited about the progress of that. So as we're committed to promoting these training opportunities to high school students, and as I said, veterans and underserved communities, we're ensuring that everyone has access to meaningful careers. By coordinating with these universities and workforce development agencies, industry stakeholders, We are creating a unified training ecosystem that prepares our workforce for the future. Such partners we have right now are Platoon 22. We've partnered with Hood College. We're talking to American University. Right now, our cohort is through WorkSource Montgomery, so we're very excited about that. And the benefits of the BioHub is very clear. By expanding our talent pool, we will be attracting high-paying jobs and enable those currently unemployed to gain new skills and re-enter the workforce. In today's rapidly changing economic landscape, we will continually skill and develop essential for job security and career advancement. This initiative will also save our Maryland life science companies time and money by providing impactful training solutions that will replicate their best practices. So they will now have access to a pool of work-ready candidates whose skills match their needs, fueling our economy's growth. So we're very excited about the BioHub, and we're very excited about the members that are in our membership in BioAg. And we're on our way again with a cohort that we have today, 7 students, and they're putting together, they're doing a masterclass, and it's a 2-week program. And after that, we'll be having a career fair for them and hopefully have them placed into jobs within the next few months.
That's fabulous. It's exciting that you guys have moved in. Can I ask what is your cohort like? Are they people who are currently working in the industry? Are they college or community college folks?
So we have five students right now that are unemployed. And then we have 1 student that is employed, not in the industry. And then we have another student that is employed at an industry company. So all across the gamut. And this masterclass that we have, again, is 2 weeks. It's from 10 to 4 every day. And they're learning the basics, gowning, cells, et cetera. So they could move right into an entry-level position. And the one that's in industry right now, that's going to help them to progress.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's lots of synergies there with kind of the work that the administration has done on career readiness by the end of high school and the kind of focus on apprenticeships that we have. So if the state can help in any way, it would be great to follow up on that topic for sure.
Thank you.
Chair
I have a
Kaiser,
question.
Go ahead.
Yes, sorry about that. Yes, I do have a question for Michelle. My question, when you talked about workforce and the training, and you mentioned the cohort you have, every little bit helps, but that number 7 doesn't sound like it gets us to the 33 people available for the 100 jobs. So I wanted to ask, given your location and the location of so many biotech companies in the Montgomery County region and the universities at Shady Grove, pulling together 9 of our state universities, they're nearby. What I always hear from them is that they're trying to figure out what the workforce wants and create more of those degrees. So do you work closely with them in trying to ensure that we have more degree programs at that location to support our local industries?
Yeah, and that's a great question. Absolutely. So the 7 that we have, this is just our first cohort. This is our pilot. When the center is fully up and running, which will take, some time, not forever, but take a little bit of time. We're hoping that we can put through at least 400 or 500 students per year. A lot of the partnerships that we're going to have with the universities and the community colleges, it is going to be a pipeline. So it's going to be like, as they do in North Carolina and in California and Boston, they start with their core programs at the university or college, and then we supplement. So the BioHub is a supplement where it's that hands-on piece that they're not getting in the colleges or universities that industry wants, they're going to have here, and then they're going to move straight through to the jobs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do any other members have questions for this group? Okay, well, I think that probably brings us to the end of our.
Delegate Feldmark put her hand up.
Oh, great. Go ahead,
Excuse me.
please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly, as and I understand you said it'll take a little bit of time for the pilot to grow. What can help us? What can we do to help you, or what can other partners do to help you, grow that cohort into what you envision as the full size of the program? And kind of, I'm just wondering what we can do to build sort of a multiplier effect to help grow the really good but currently sort of small program you have.
Thank you. I think right now it's just getting the information out about the program. Our target really is going to be, so as I said, we have a partnership with Platoon 22. They work with veterans all day long. So, it's being part of their system, getting the word out to let people know that this is a job, this is an alternate, opportunity for people. They don't have to go to a 4-year degree to get something that's meaningful for them. College isn't for everybody. And it's also for high school students coming right out of high school. I mean, I've seen in just the past few years a decline of interest with people going to college. It's expensive. Some people can't afford it. And it's just not something that, they're interested in doing. So I think for me, it's really getting the word out to other partners, especially that pipeline through the universities and college system where they are not able to teach some of these things, that they can put the students through, and then they go straight into industry. And just real quickly, we have for North Carolina, so NC State, what they do is they have a partnership like a biohub there. It's called BTech. So NC State, they put their students through specific program, a biotechnology program. They then send them through, 12 credit through BTech. And then they have 100% job placement, 100% job placement. So that's what we need to get to. And I think it's really just promoting that there are alternate opportunities, getting it into the right hands, and just pushing people to say, hey, there's opportunities for you. Come on in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really, really good question. And I keep thinking about those opportunities to co-promote that have to exist. So we'll keep looking. I just want to thank all of our fabulous presenters for being here today. Wanted to share a few things that I think I learned. I mean, first of all, we confirmed that, Maryland is a leader in biotechnology. We learned that, we're diverting organic waste from landfills and one of the best at doing that, which was awesome. And we also learned about the challenges and the barriers that our farming community faces in the adopting of some of this high-tech stuff. We also heard, a lot about biotechnology and the health side of things, national trends in artificial intelligence, biotech, and digital health, with a focus on Baltimore's role and how we can be a leader in that area. So I think it was an incredibly productive, conversation. I appreciated, Commerce kind of giving us the big picture and what the state is doing. I feel like it sounds like we're doing a lot, but there's some connecting of the dots that we could continue to work on together. So I look forward to continued, conversations. And once again, to all the members who are, watching at home or watching tomorrow at home, please do send your questions to us so that we can circle up back and follow up with speakers as need be. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to my co-chair, Delegate Kaiser, to close us out.
Thank you, Senator Hester. I don't think there's much more to say. I appreciate all that you do, and thank you again to all the speakers, and appreciate the follow-up that you're going to have to do from some of the questions we'll be sending back. But again, thank you for all that you're doing on biotech and on educating us today. And please stay in touch, not just with the Joint Committee, but all the members, if there's ways that we could be supportive from the legislative side. So thank you all again.
And thank you to our fabulous, staff who made this possible. We appreciate you finding the great speakers and for connecting us all on technology. And with that, we'll adjourn for lunch. Thanks.